So I'll give you a little bit of a backstory because there's a lot of rubbish being passed around. I actually met Larry Warren in 2007 at a Lappies conference in Lytham St Anne's, and from that point on we were friends. We were never in a relationship, it was never anything like that. And then in 2012 I moved to Liverpool, which is where Larry lives, and we started to see each other more often. He would come round to my house where I live with my partner and my children, and he would stay the weekend. Then he had some trouble going on in his life, and he ended up staying on our sofa for 4 months. He was never my flatmate. I was never his landlady. We were friends, and we allowed him to stay in our home. So now, obviously, when he was living with me, I noticed certain things that he was doing and saying. He was changing the whole thing. He got the memo out, he got the Halt tape out, he was the king of the hill. And I know Brenda, I've known Brenda for a long time, about 12 or 13 years, so I knew that this was all rubbish. And, you know, everything else started to change because somebody was interested in making a film about his life and his events at Rendlesham Forest. So even though he had all that attention, he still wanted to make everything about him and started to change the entire face of the Rendlesham Forest incident. So I obviously, when I realised what was going on, it was after I'd listened to Adrian Bustinza talk on the Phenomenon radio show December 2015. And that's when I realised that I was hearing Adrian saying the exact same things that Larry said, even down to tiny little memories. He's got a camera, he remembers seeing a camera, taking a camera off somebody, had an M on it. That's in Left at Eastgate. Adrian Bustinza said this. I was like, how can they have that same memory? Red flags, red flags. So I started looking into it. Also, he had some memorabilia that he was selling, and we'd seen a lot of it in our home. And he sold a piece of it, and it was in Wales Online in 2015. This John Lennon sketch. May Pang said, "That's not John's." So I was like, "What? I've seen that. I've held that drawing." So I started looking into his online behaviour as far as the auctions are concerned. He had left some files on my partner's laptop. I didn't upload them to my computer and steal them off him. He didn't have a laptop, and he was using my partner, so we set up an account for him on the laptop, and he used that. We didn't have a password for it or anything, but for Larry, all his passwords were Dennis, and he got hacked all the time according to him. So in about 2018, January 2018, Gary Heseltine stepped in and started talking all the time instead of Larry Warren. And he said, it's all about the film Capel Green, and it's all about him, and I'm bullying him. It's got nothing to do with Gary Heseltine at all. It's everything to do with Larry Warren and his behaviour and his lies that he's been telling. For example, he's the original whistleblower.
Oh, still doing it. Hang on, 2 seconds. I didn't know it, sorry. Last speaker.
Can somebody get me a bottle of water, please? I forgot to bring the water.
The silence, the wall of silence, that was still a lot of areas. So there were 70 to 80 of us. Some people were English. There was some Bobbies there from the town of Woodbridge, which is pretty close. And I think the best way to make it the silence, leave the wall of silence up, is a lot of people reacted in their own ways. They were terrified. There were a couple suicides because of this, and I just happened to be the loudest whistleblower. I certainly wasn't the first. I was the one that got through. And
Tell us a little about the story.
That's not the first time he said that. He said it a few times in the early days. He also said it to he was talking to Charles Halt in Washington at a conference, and he said it again. Thanks.
Not working.
Right, okay.
Also with one member of my family. Well, when that water happened, said, why were you so predisposed? Why would you do this? I wasn't the first one to say what I said. I was just allowed it, it was by accident. There was no money to be made, nothing at that time.
Right, okay, so now I'm going to move on to the day of events. Where do I go? Just
right hand button.
right.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, when was that picture taken? Let's set the scene. This is looking towards which
I'm
house?
sorry, I set it up a little bit, real quick. This is 28th of December, 1980, and if you see it on the book, I bought a Keystone camera. I had a camera in high school, I went to school in England, as exchange student, had a camera that died on me the first week of February. So I went to the base exchange, and I bought a Keystone 110 camera. Came out of the base, 3 friends of mine and myself, and a guy named Jim Harper, he had a car, was driving us to the free bus on the other side of Woodbridge base from Bentwaters in his car. So I took a shot of the main gate, which is on the day of my incident. So the incidents were already happening when I take, so I didn't know they would. I snapped a picture of the main gate of Bentwaters. It says alert condition. Got back in the car, and then we left and went over to Woodbridge base. As we're driving down, this is Rendlesham Forest here. As we're getting down and turning toward Eastgate Road, which is a back access road during the day, to cross through the base to the main road, and the free buses to Ipswich, where we were going for the afternoon before our shift started that night.
I was sent Barry Greenwood's files from Clear Intent by Paul Dean, who's in Australia, who's a brilliant researcher. So I was looking through these files, it's everything, every piece of paper, anything that's been available on Rendlesham Forest incidents, people's names, addresses, everything. So I was looking through this and I got to the end of it, and I found this. This is a scan of a photo album, and this one in the middle here is one that he allegedly put on Facebook in 2014 that had a UFO above it, about here, and then another tiny one above it there. But as you can see, maybe you can't see clearly, there's no UFO there.
Just pause a second.
So this is the alleged UFO.
Thank you.
Close up. Even closer, you can see here, this circle, that's the camera. This is a head, right? That's the original. There's no UFO, there's no nothing. So Larry, there was a big hoo-ha about this. Larry said that he did have the original and he produced the original. He produced this one. Sorry, this one. That's the original. This is the one that he said he had. Now, that's black and white and that is colour. So there's a massive hoo-ha about this, and it was actually Ben Emlyn Jones. When I'd uploaded some photos that I found on the laptop, and one of them had like a circle on it, and I thought, oh, he's tried to make it look older, it looks like a coffee cup ring to me. I didn't even look at it properly, and that's what I said it was. So it was Ben Emlyn Jones who discovered this. There's the coffee cup ring that I thought it was. This is Ben Emlyn Jones' wonderful analysis. Look, zero match. If only I'd have thought of that. So I took all the colour out of it, stripped it right down. Who's this? With glasses, chubby fingers. Apparently that's me, or Nick Pope, because I know that we look exactly alike. So here we have a Facebook post, a guy called Ant French. Here he is. He says, we're looking for a man with glasses, a pointy nose, and a bracelet on his arm. He jumps in, he says he's got definitive proof that this is me, because that was me, but he says it was in the other image, and there's his bracelet. That's his US Air Force bracelet.
And then I started posting Bentwaters pictures throughout the 2 days. The next day I get to this guy, and I'm like, should I post that? That's like nothing much. And then I look to the side where people would comment on your picture. There was only one comment, it's not really something to look at. And a guy named Nick Sayer from this country down south made a statement, Larry, what is that dot object above the A-10 aircraft. Now, I looked real close, as there was a little dot, so I posted it. And I said, this was taken the day of the evening of before my thing happened. And there was actually two things. Now, what happened is, as I get on, there's a lot smarter people than me that I'm friends with on there. And suddenly people started running filters, doing this and that. In the end, by the time I was blown away, and what you're going to see on my son's head, which means something in Liverpool, is exactly, and by the way, Bruce McAfee was an what's it called? Yeah, optical physicist of the U.S. Navy and a doctor. He made a comment after all these internet jockeys were doing great work, and he said, this is not tens and tens of feet, and this and that and the other. And so I'm like, oh, this is unbelievable. But I will tell you, on my son's head, on my family's head, my name, this is only a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the object that is above that aircraft, which probably doesn't see it, is the exact thing I've described for 34 years and could never describe exactly. You're looking at it in daytime, in the air, and that's all I can say. I tell you what, on my son's head, I took that picture and that thing was there. And then, unfortunately, later at night, it was right in my face.
That proves that there was something flying around the base in the pertinent period between the 26th and 28th of December 1980. And it took 34 years for that piece of the jigsaw to fall into place. So I think that's pretty special.
So he has two versions of what he was doing that weekend. The weekend of the incidents. In one narrative, he's in Germany. He doesn't know anything about what's happened. He comes back on the 27th. He starts to fly back. He gets back on the base late, and he goes switch the next day to go haggle with Axe Music for an amp. Well, and this is in his book, Left at Eastgate. Axe Music was shut because it was Sunday, and back then, everything was shut on a Sunday. So his narrative is here, that he was here on base, and he was in Ipswich. Oh, that was it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you need to play it?
No. Some of these have gone out of sync.
Oh, right.
But basically, that's the camera, the exact camera that you can see there,
You have to go close to
there, and where were we? Hang on. There. That's his camera. That's him. It's not me. Here. Oh, that's better. Genius. You can see the camera again. And if you look there, this is Larry Warren's artwork in his flat. It's saying that this is me. I've done this, and I've planted it, and I've tried to make it look like he's faked the picture when actually I faked it. He's saying that I faked the A10 photo, uploaded it onto Facebook, which is impossible because he said he had in a group that I've never even been in. And it was in 2014 when we were friends and everything was fine, so why would I do that? That's the painting. If you can see, there. Larry Warren painted that. That's not on my wall in my house. Says it's me. Look, that's me. I don't think so. This is In Contact in 1993.
On the night in question, well, I should set it up for you. 2 nights before the event I was involved in, there was an amazing encounter with 3 or 4 security policemen off the east gate of RAF Woodbridge, which was our sister base from Bentwater, 6 miles away. And these gentlemen encountered some very bizarre things. They had missing time, all sorts of negatives happened to them. Senior people on the base really didn't believe it. The next night something else happened, which is rather vague. We still haven't pulled up everything on that. I had been in Germany for 2 days. I had met a girl in London, and a friend of ours and mine went over for the Christmas break. We worked 6 days on and 3 off, so I had a few days. And on the 28th of December, we'd be starting our shift again.
and it's describing the first night specifically.
Well, I'm describing the first night because in our debriefing, we had that basically outlined to us. And therefore, I thought that all this must have happened in one night, and we were responding to that incident. It turned out a couple years later, it was not the same night, but I thought I can't get in trouble for writing what they're telling me because I wasn't in that first night, wasn't on duty. I was with them girls in Germany.
So,
This is from Left at Eastgate. Day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, left for Germany, was there for a couple of days, and he came back on and around the 27th. If you've gone for 2 days and you left on the 24th, then, you know, you do the math.
A few people have been mentioning some quotes and evidence that they found in some of the old books like Sky Crash and You Can't Tell the People. One of the questions is about...
I didn't write those books, you know, so...
One of the questions that keeps coming up is sometimes you claim to have been in one place and then another, i.e. you were on the base, no, you were in Germany. Do you want to clear that one up?
I've done that. Where have I done that?
There you go. Came back, that's Left at Eastgate. Okay, so on to the actual incidents. He says that he was with Adrian Bustinzer from the minute... What? Okay, he said he was with Adrian Bustinzer from the minute he was picked up from his perimeter post 18 until 4:30 in the morning. That's in Left at Eastgate. Adrian says that he was with Colonel Halt all night, and something that Colonel Halt has actually said to me was true. He said to me he was stuck to him like glue. So Adrian is actually heard on the Halt tape, and Warren says he was with Adrian, but nowhere near Halt's group. So how can Adrian be in two places at once? He can't have been with Warren from 11:30 until later, because Colonel Halt got into the forest around midnight and shortly after started the recording. And there are time markers in the recording. What Warren says is actually impossible. So here he says, this is when Adrian Bustinzer picks him up from perimeter post 18.
And
this is Adrian Bustinzer on the Phenomena Show.
I want to say that Lieutenant England was on duty, but I think he had just gotten off of duty, I think, and we came on. I don't quite remember who was on duty as far as that was concerned, but I do remember when I returned back to Woodbridge base that we ended up going to pick up Lieutenant England and Sergeant Ball. And we proceeded out the East Gate into the forest area. And if you remember, East Gate was, you know, you went out the gate, you went out the road, and then we turned to the right.
He said, we went to Eastgate and we turned to the right. The book's called Left at Eastgate. Also, Larry Warren's ex-girlfriend, Cookie, I spoke to her some time ago, and she said that they were definitely told to turn right at Eastgate. Anyway, so I said in the beginning of all this that Larry had said to me that he'd taken Adrian's story and he'd mulched it with his own, and he told it because he thought it needed to be told. He said that he talked to Adrian and him were all right now, but that's what had happened. So when we'd fallen out and I said said in public, he said that he took Adrian's account. He totally denied it. So these pictures are out there.
So at the end of the day, I'm tapped out by Robert Paul, who was a flight chief. Head back to the site, to the parking lot. I see these things and they're close. There was a separation, but we're watching it. But no one's up there shaking hands and all this. I've never said that. But it makes a fool out of me, doesn't it? So it sounds good, enemies will use that. And I look back, and that was in place. Sergeant Costinger remained. This is why Costinger's with Burroughs. Later, John came forward after I went back.
Which is impossible because of the timestamps on the Halt tape and the fact that Adrian was actually heard speaking. So he can't have gone off with Colonel Halt after he's left. He's saying that he's gone into the forest, He's had his incident with Adrian as they're leaving. He's seen Colonel Halt wearing aviator glasses, which, why would you wear sunglasses at night anyway? I've asked Colonel Halt if he ever had, you know, if this was true. He says he's never even owned a pair of aviator glasses. So he's saying that he's had his experience with Adrian, and then they've left the forest, and then Adrian's gone with Colonel Halt. But that is totally impossible. If he left the forest at 4:30, as he said, he left at Eastgate, then how can Adrian have gone off with Colonel Halt at 4:30 when it was actually midnight, and there's a timestamp of 1 or 2 o'clock, I can't remember now, actually in the tape. So that's impossible, that's another lie. See, that's what time he's saying he got back. These are all out of whack. Trying to find the bit where he said that he's told Bustins' story. But anyway, he'd had a conversation with Linda Moulton Howe in 1986. And he said some things in there that actually are, I took Adrian's account. He said several things about it, and he said some really wild things as well. One of them was that that Adrian had seen a giant something wearing a cape in the forest. I haven't got that screenshot, unfortunately, but all the other stuff that he's saying is that he took Adrian's account, Linda's recorded it, he's talking about everything that had happened. He said, Adrian put it on me. Now, if he says that that tape is not legit because he's been making noises that it's not, he actually asked me to be a go-between between him and Linda Moulton Howe way back in 2010. Here he is, this is the email from Linda saying that she's got send him a transcript. And he says, first of all, let me go. There. First of all, let me thank Linda for finding the tape. So we can't say that it didn't happen. There we go. Larry Warren agreed to tell Sergeant Bustins' experience to protect Bustins about the underground base at RAF Bentwaters. This was Bustins. That was Bustins, but he was trying to tell his first hand from me, second hand. So he was trying to tell it as if it had happened to him. Right? There it is, in the transcript, which is public. Linda, for some reason, has not put the tape out, and I wish she would, because I would rather be playing clips now so you could hear him saying this yourself, rather than these screenshots, because I get accused of faking everything, so obviously I'll be accused of faking this.
And we got back in the vehicle, we went back to Bentwaters, and instead of going back to the barracks, I thought where I was going, we ended up going to the area, like we're driving towards the security base itself, where we had our guard mounts and stuff. We passed through maintenance and so forth, and I saw the camera. There was this big old sign, and there was this building, and it had where they developed photographs and so forth. And I always call it the camera shop. And we stopped. They pulled over. They got out, they opened my door, they come on in. So I walked in. At that point, I thought maybe they were going to show me some pictures or something because that's the area that we were in. But that wasn't the case. When we went in, it was, we went in and it was like down a hallway.
This is about the
and he
interrogation.
kept walking down that hallway, and there was we went right, and there was like, I think a door or another hall, and then we went into a room, and at first, you know, they said have a seat, and I was like, well, what's going on? Because the room was kind of like empty with the table and a chair, and I was like, well, what's going on? They said, well, we're going to ask you some questions, and I really didn't want to sit down. I started getting scared at that point. And I said, well, I don't want to sit down. I said, I don't want to do this. I said, I'll go back to this barracks. And they said, you know, you need to sit down. We're going to ask you questions, and you need to cooperate. And one of the guys put his hand on my shoulder. Didn't force me down, but was like, you're going to sit down. So I sat down, and I started looking around, and they turned the lights on. And that really spooked me at that point, and that's when the light came out in front of me. and I don't recall seeing a light in front of me at that point, but a light came out in front of me, and there was a gentleman, I could see the silhouette, and he started asking me questions. And he was asking me questions as to, you know, what did you see out there? And I started asking him, well, who are you? And he said, you need to answer the question. He never identified himself to me. He said I needed to be more concerned as to what I saw out there and to tell him what I saw because he was going to record everything. And when he said record, I said, tape recorder or what? He said, I'm recording everything. And I started to tell him about the light, the response, what I saw. And when I was telling him that, there were several times during the interrogation that the gentleman told me, he said, no, you didn't see that. You saw it was the lighthouse. It was the light shines and it reflects off the trees. And I said, light doesn't reflect off the tree. I said, light shines on the tree and you can see the tree. And I said, and when the light comes around behind you or above you, that's not a lighthouse. And he was very persistent about it being the light from the lighthouse. And then I told him, I said, well, the light from the lighthouse is either going to be white and it's going to rotate. But I said, you know, supposedly that lighthouse is too far away. I said, but then again, and he says, you're not hearing me. He says, I'm telling you that you're seeing this light from the lighthouse. And he said that he didn't have time for games, that I needed to be truthful and tell him what I really saw, which was the light. And I said, I was truthful with you. I said, I saw the light. I said, but the light was green, it was blue, it was orange. I said, yes, it was a white with a blue tint. And then I told him at that point, I said, there was one point where the light, one of the lights broke out into about 5 different smaller lights. I said, it was like a big ball. And it just burst like a fireworks do. And I said, and it broke out, and they just kind of all maneuvered, and then all just, it kind of left. And there was silence, and he told me, he said, what you're telling me, he said, doesn't exist, did not happen. I'm telling you what you saw, it was the lighthouse light. And I said, no, sir. I said, you're confused. I said, you're confused. I'm telling you. And he said, son, he said, bullets are a dime a dozen. He said, and you're cheap. He says, do you understand me? And I didn't know what to say anymore.
So you heard that in the interrogation, they were telling him over and over and over, you saw a lighthouse.
We get out there, and sure enough, there was this thing, this mist, this whatever it is. Now, they try to blame this on the Orford Lighthouse. This guy named Ridpath in England, he still makes a career out of this. He's a moron. And actually south of that, a red light came in off the Orford Quay from the North Sea, that direction.
Ian Ridpath makes a living out of saying it was the lighthouse. That is the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard in my life. The lighthouse came into it because it was briefly mentioned as a point of reference, but also because of the interrogation that Adrian went through.
I was absolutely wanting to call my mother. I wanted to go home. I wanted to get off of that.
So what was his point?
I don't know what his point was. His point was psychological.
So then at the end of that
Lay
section-
this on you and say bullets are cheap. I'm the guy who said bullets are cheap too. I've seen it attributed to other people. I'm the guy that said, what happens if we say, they were talking about base, ComSec and security on phones, all this, I was in the military, guys. You never know it on these shows, but.
Okay, this is from You Can't Tell the People. Here, I was very young at the time. Remember, I can't really see this. But what he said here, where is my lieutenant? Why am I the only one going through this? Why am I alone? So he wasn't in an interrogation, in an underground base with Larry Warren. He was on his own. Okay, so Adrian Bustinza said he saw a silhouette of a man when they put the light on. So this is the silhouette of the thing behind the screen that Larry Warren describes in Left at Eastgate. Because he says there's an underground base. See, I told you about the film in the underground base, and this is Larry Warren talking to Linda Moulton Howe. He told me in March or April 1981 about his experience. I'm staying away from Bustin's experience now, because again, I've had enough trouble with mine. I'm not going to carry the ball for Adrian. I did for a long time, but he did not do what he said he would do, which was lie.
That Sergeant Adrian Bustinza you hear about if you read the story or hear about it a lot. We have a statement from him that will be included in Left at Eastgate. That picture was taken by me in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt in 1981, where we were sent for a month to get us away from the base. And we did nothing but sit around and play cards with these people with towels in their heads. No, in fact, they played cards.
He said that he took that photograph of Adrian Bustinza in 1981 in March in the Valley of the Kings. I spoke to Adrian Bustinza last week. He said, I gave him that picture to show him the temples. I provided him pictures of the Eastgate itself. And he was not deployed to Egypt with me. Linda Moulton Howe's transcript again. When did you and Bustinza go to Egypt? In March 1981, the third month after all the stuff happened in Rendlesham Forest. Was it in Egypt that Adrian Bustinza broke down to tell you about the underground installation at Bentwaters? No, we had just gotten back at the end of March or early April 1981. In Egypt, we never talked about anything, we just had a good time. But our Egyptian guide, blah, don't need to read that bit, that's not relevant.
Running a fire team leader, I said, people ain't gonna look at me the same way. People are not gonna believe anything I say. I'm gonna be looked down at. I'm not gonna be respected anymore. And I'm a sergeant in the United States Air Force. I said, I can't afford that. At the time I was looking for a career in the United States Air Force. That didn't happen. Not after what took place, but I recall getting back they drove me back to the barracks. And I believe, I can't remember if it was that night or the next morning, is when I slipped a note on Larry's door and I told him that I really needed to talk to him.
So Larry said that it all happened in March, but then Adrian Bustinza is just saying there that the very next day after the incident is when he talked to Larry, not 3 months later. Okay, Sky Crash. Written in 1984, I do believe, by Brenda Butler, Dot Street, Jenny Randalls. Here, initially Atwalis only felt a presence and did not recall having seen any aliens. Initially, Atwalis only felt a presence and did not see aliens. Most definitely, there was a definite conversation took place. I was with the base commander at the time. I believe he shook one of their hands, but this is hearsay. There were aliens. I learned that from almost everyone involved. They were on the ground and they were outside the craft. I think there were 3, but I myself don't remember seeing them. Under hypnosis, Atwalis, which was Larry Warren initially, they gave him a false name, he found his memory extending beyond the point where the TV video light danced on the side of the UFO. He now saw aliens. Wallace described them very clearly. There were 3. Their height was about 3 to 3.5 feet. Their heads were large in proportion to their bodies. Their eyes were like inverted cat's eyes. And the ear, nose, and mouth were all just slits. In the hypnosis session, he realised that he had been taken to an underground complex at night on the day after the encounter. He was then in the hypnosis session, and it was conducted by Fred Max. Under hypnosis, Wallace gives an excellent description of the events which matches what he consciously recalled. Here we've got You Can't Tell the People again. According to Sky Crash, Fred Max was a behavioural psychologist who conducted the hypnotic session that apparently helped Larry to recall the names of the other witnesses and much more detail of the events. However, this session still sees Larry having blacked out, waking up in his barracks, which is strange considering he claims that this hasn't happened. I found it equally strange that there was no reference to this session, or indeed Fred Max, in Left at Eastgate. Surely that this was important because it would apply to his involvement in the actual incident and would help to quell accusations that he was not involved. I decided to contact Peter Robbins in New York, who explained that the reason the session with Fred Max was not featured in their book was due to a decision made by Larry. When I pushed Peter for more information, it turned out that, for whatever reason, he confessed to Doc that the hypnotic session in 1983 had not been genuine because, unbeknown to the hypnotist, he had not been fully hypnotised. His excuse was that he had gone along with the pretense because someone had paid for his session, and they said words to the effect. He had gone through the motions and that it better be good. So the first time that he remembers aliens is a hypnotic session, regression that he'd faked. Sky Crash. A certain degree of independent evidence about the Wallace testimony does exist. The recorded interview under hypnotic regression was subjected to a voice stress analysis technique by the experimenters. They are satisfied that the results indicate the integrity of his story. So, he can't pass VSA while he's lying. Here we've got Adrian Brustins in a conversation on a group that I've never been in, and he's talking to John Burroughs. I don't remember seeing Larry. This is after the 2015 recording that he did on Phenomenon Radio with John. Because he started talking to John, he started to open up a lot more and started to say more things. So, I don't remember Larry being there at the time. I remember going and picking up all England and driving to the sighting. I remember getting out there, but not with Larry. If you remember, Larry says that he was picked up by Adrian Brustins and Lieutenant England, sometimes as Swift, sometimes as a black guy in the Jeep, sometimes it's Steve Longero, sometimes it's two other people that he didn't know. It's always changing. That bit always changes. Whoever is in the Jeep with him changes all the time. He had to because he says a lot of things about the incident that I know I told him. He couldn't have been there when I was because I got back to the dogs and he'd already been there. So this is why I believe and now know that he had used a lot of my recollection. I told him everything. I think he might have recorded everything. I just don't see how he remembers everything I told him. So I said this, silly girl, I'm 49 this year. I suspect you also falsified the Brustins interview with your false quotes by him. I'm not surprised that JB is also in on that. He's a silly boy.
That's me, the young.
Yeah. So, we've got a whole chapter called Underground in Left at Eastgate.
This was the Disneyland on acid night. This is the night we did have a non-human presence. We did. I've been saying it for almost 30 years now. I don't know where it's from, what it's about, but I saw the reaction to it by our government. I went through a debriefing, not an underground base with an alien, and no one fixed the spaceship and all the things that have been said over the years, because I sure didn't say them.
He says he didn't say them, but there's an entire chapter, which is the third one, and it's called Underground, and that's in Left at Eastgate. There you go, that's the page. Underground is where he starts describing the incident where he's supposedly taken with Adrian Brustins there. Underground, they are drugged, taken down, and then they're sat in these cinema-type seats in front of a screen with something behind it that's talking to them with using telepathy. Wallace was aware that the aliens had damaged their craft and that assistance was being offered in its repair. You just heard him say that he'd never said that. He says he never saw aliens. This is the Art Wallace drawing that he did for Barry Greenwood, and those are from the Greenwood files. Here, he says, this says Larry Warren photo, these taken on honeymoon trip to England, okay? Big moth. And this is what the photographs that he sent, and this is the entrance to the underground base. We were taken to an underground facility on Bentwaters and we were shown very high technology equipment in some rooms. I think I was in a bit of a drug state at that point and throughout that incident, but I lost 3 days of my time over there. Other people said I was on leave, but I wasn't. We had been taken to another huge area and the craft was down below. This was on Bentwaters Underground? Yes, on Bentwaters. Here he's also said that he didn't see aliens, but then he's saying that Bustinza had said to him, "Can you see them?" And he was talking about the entities. They were small, about 3 to 4 feet tall, somewhat ghost-like in appearance. Again, large cat eyes, big heads, blah, blah, blah. So here he's saying, Colonel Williams approached them slowly, standing about 5 feet apart. They would stare at each other. Williams was well over 6 feet tall, and he looked down at them, and he's talking to the entities, which is what he said he'd never said.
Well, this is an interesting one. This is, I'll read it for you. It says 81st Security Police Squadron in processing instruction sheet. The event happened to people on D flight. We worked in shifts from A, B, C, and D. D flight worked swings and mids. That was meaning we worked night shift. This is saying that the bus, when it leaves, this is the first thing I got for shift flight assignment. You were assigned to D flight. The shift commander is Major Ziegler and some other guy. And it just talks about in processing information. So that, that's a record I stole too. Next question.
So here he's saying that he stole his records, his military records, at the advice of the base solicitor, which somebody who I contacted yesterday, but I've not heard back from him. I didn't even know that he was on Facebook, but apparently I got sent a message. Here he is. So this is the document that he says he stole. This is the top of it that you saw on the screen. This is the bottom of it, okay? Lee Swain. L-E-E-L-E-A. Lee Swain doesn't know how to spell his own name. Twice. 2, he signed it twice in different pen. On the Warren perspective that he recorded with Tino Magera, he said he wrote this bit. He must have forgotten that he put that signature there at the bottom. That is the full sheet, so you can see it in its entirety.
This is important. This is medical dental appointment. This is one of the pieces I stole. What you see obliterated up here in white is my social security number. And why we do that in this day and age of fraud, if someone in the audience in America or anywhere saw that and was inclined, they could go ring up charge accounts and everything. And, we're trapped with our social. I don't know what it's like in England, but we have numbers on our head. This is 81st Security Police up here. The date is 2nd of February 1981 at the office. It was on typing kind of paper, so it's on through that. Optical Retina Clinic, that stands for. Under it says burn exposure. The doctor is echoed, the number is whatever, and the date for it was issued was in January. This is just a week after the event. And this is bring all records and x-rays, full exam, Lake and Heath out of your clinic, Lake and Heath. But it's an important piece because it showed the beginning. I don't know where the follow-up information is. It's in my file. It's in Maryland somewhere. But,
okay, so that is, it says Opti-Ret Burn Clinic. I don't think they've got a clinic like that, so it would say ophthalmic.
I'm back on the phone now with my congressman, Jerry Solomon, who was involved in this in 1981 because of problems I had with my military records. I did nothing, you'll see, but here, a copy and documents and how I got them. I didn't tell you on the phone because you were busy that day or whatever. On the phone, there are problems, but I took them. I had a hand carrying from one place to another, and after all this had happened, I said, I'm going to pay them because they're not going to be there eventually. And I was right. I don't have them all, but I have enough.
So there he said he decided to take them, but he actually said that the base solicitor had told him to steal them. Now this is the version in left at Eastgate, nice and clean. And I'm in possession of the original document. It's just one of the items that I hid. And my meeting with the base lawyer, Colonel Persky, as I wrote that very famous book, I had a 15-minute window to keep some things whilst hand-carrying my records to the records section for out-processing from the US Air Force. And Colonel Persky said I was going to be put in the fire, or you're going to be fireproofed. So I was taking some of my records. That's the full. This is actually aimed at Colonel Halt about taking records. This is just on Tina Maguire's page. It was a statement that he put out for Larry. This is the actual document, as you can see. It's covered in Tipex, Tipex, Tipex. Tipex down at the bottom, and other stuff written in. Now, if you get to know Larry's handwriting, you know that this is actually his handwriting. Obviously, I'm not an analyst, and so I don't take it because, you know, nobody's an expert in that. Here is Dr. Eccles, the person that he said he saw. And he's orthopedics, not ophthalmic. So unless his eyeballs were fused to his elbow, then he wouldn't have been looking at his eyeballs. We weren't injured by it, and I was very close.
Self-admitted, piece of light. It was just odd. It seemed like it was no sooner there that it blew up, not outward or upward, it just blew down with all these sparkles and different colors of light. Indescribable. It was beyond me how this happened. We weren't injured by it. I was very close, and it changed. And that was the weirdest thing about it. It changed into the ship that people had seen earlier, the three cops had fallen out there.
In finally 2015, he gave a talk, which David recorded.
Within hours, I won't tell you this, within hours of the event happening before our debrief, I was ill back in our dorm that morning. This is just hours after the Rendlesham Forest incident guy in the back, because they kind of knew him. And I didn't feel well. I felt a metallic taste in my mouth, my eyes were watering profusely. So I already had effects of what we had been exposed to. Not just me, everyone, by the way.
So as you can see, it didn't hurt him, and then immediately it hurt him. This is a statement from Steve LaPlume, who was a friend of Larry's back in the day. He remembers seeing Larry on Laken Heath. He said he was getting a medical discharge for an issue he had with his wrist, and that it should have been caught and missing, but it did not do so, and he was getting him out of a contract. So he was actually leaving the Air Force because of an injury to his wrist originally. So this is the first talk that him and Peter did in England in 1994.
Name of the boat. This is an important piece now. This is where things get kind of funky. This is request for separation, Airman First Class Lawrence Warren. I was no longer working as a security police officer. I was a cop still, but I was in the back offices so they could really keep an eye on me. I went to a lawyer to make a long story short. The guy made waves. They were making life tough for me. And got this thing ball moving that due to breach of contract on the Air Force's part, I was eligible for a discharge. My plan was to get out, go back in and get stationed at another base in a different job. Well, they got me. When this is signed by Gordon Williams, his staff, the commander, who, as a wing commander, would not handle these responsibilities. Not at all. Colonel Halt and people under like that would do that. Anyway, the full colonel and commander of the bases took care of my discharge, personally. And he writes, I approved the honorable discharge of Lawrence C. Warren from the U.S. Air Force to be effective on or about 15 May 1981. I carefully reviewed his application and concluded that the intended AFR, blah, 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 non-fulfillment of guaranteed enlistment training program has been met. Now, I had a person that knows the codes and all, and says none of this is all chicken feed. None of it makes sense or applies to real code. Approval of Lawrence request to separate from the service and from the best interests of himself and the U.S. Air Force. And I've been flapping my mouth, so you can read into that.
So blah, 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 assessment met and passed. This is the actual document that he was showing there, and it says assessment not met. And this is a letter that he says is a fake. This is just, what they're saying. But basically, it says that he's been discharged from the US Air Force because of a bilateral, whatever, problem with his elbow, and so he can't re-enlist, basically. So he says that he wanted to re-enlist, and there's a great big hoo-ha about that. and they wouldn't let him re-enlist, but it was because he wouldn't stop flapping his mouth. It was actually because of the problem that he had with his, it says elbow here, Steve McClure remembers him saying wrist. Regardless, he had a problem with his arm. So he's trying to re-enlist, and it's not happening. He says he speaks to a woman. She's told me that this had happened a few times before. The process could end up costing a lot of money. My records, she said, were now stored with the National Security Agency, NSA, at Fort Meade in Maryland. So, I thought, are they really? You know, you can get a basic record. You can't get a full record of somebody unless they've been dead for 10 years. So I applied for the basic record, and this is a response from FOIA. That he was on base, and he was there from July to May 1981. He says that he was in there for years, or sometimes he said he was there for a year, or whatever. But basically, they're not with an NSA. And the other letter, which I should have put in, there was an email that came from one of the personnel there that said that should he want his records, all he has to do is apply for them or give somebody else permission to apply for them. So they are not with the NSA. So there we go, we've got the honourable discharge, and he's got the ribbons he got. He said he got 5 ribbons in 1 year of service. Well, he was only in for 9 months. And he was discharged as unsuitable or undesirable. That's his discharge code, which we could say that is unsuitable just because of his injury in his arm or his congenital defect. So, just a reminder that the recorded in the regression was subject to a voice stress analysis technique, which he passed.
Have you taken a polygraph exam relative to what you recall as the events that occurred with related to you?
You mean a lie detector test?
Yeah.
Not a lie detector test. I took a the voice where they checked the voice. Yeah, to a concert 3 times. And to the Connecticut State Police, actually, is what he did that with.
So there he says that he passed 3 voice stress analysis that Larry Fawcett, who wrote Clear Intent, arranged through the Connecticut Police. This is a letter to Phil Class from Walt Andreas of MUFON. And Phil Class had offered to pay for a polygraph test for Larry Warren, and they're saying in this, there's literally no point because he failed a VSA. Failed VSA, the name on it, Larry Fawcett. He's saying that Larry Fawcett put him through 3 and he passed them all. They did 1, he failed, and there he is. This is Walt Andreas. Chuck DeCaro did the CNN special assignment, and Walt Andreas, Larry Fawcett, and Chuck. And he says, declining your generous offer to underwrite half the cost of a polygraph for Larry Warren, based on our investigation. In this case, Larry would probably fail any questions related to having personally observed 3 occupants, and their physical description is depicted in the CNN file. You know, no point in doing it. So here we have a post from Adrian Bustinza. Sacha and Nigel, I appreciate your interest and support. You've definitely been listening with an open mind and surely have a lot of questions. Goes on. Reason being, because some of us out there want glory and they don't experience what John and I have for the past 35 years. Not what Larry and I have, what John and I have, which has been denial, nightmares, health issues, critics, and most of all, lies and deception from our own brothers, only to have the truth surface through others like yourself that have taken the time to listen. He's saying this to me and another guy called Nigel. Not, you're wrong, I was with Larry, blah, blah, blah. No, thank you for listening, and the truth came out through you. Our own brothers who are bent on taking ownership and credit for something that others experience but can't give details. It's just outright disgusting. When I asked Adrian, he said he didn't want to destroy lives. That's why he hadn't come forward. So, this is from You Can't Tell the People. It's real. Larry Fawcett has lost interest in the case. You know this underground stuff. Larry, to this day, he does not believe, that's Larry Fawcett, he does not believe me. I told Barry Greenwood and Larry Fawcett that it didn't happen to me. I'm telling you, it did not happen. When I first came out with that, well, I said it did. It was March 81. What can we do about it? Bustinza and a few others went down to this place. Bustinza and a few others. The underground garbage, I've raised that stuff forever. I didn't even see those space things. There you go, the underground garbage, I've erased forever. I didn't even see those space things.
Rendlesham, right? But I have a whole other life that I did. I worked for Epic and Atlantic Records for 20 years. I co-signed a band called Metallica. I got a huge $500,000 finder fee with a friend of mine, Rich Carlson.
There he's saying, at the Final Talk in 2015, I signed Metallica, so we're moving on actually. This is on to other important lines. I signed Metallica and I got $500,000 finder's fee.
Okay, well, sticking with the music theme, Gary.
My favorite, what?
Yeah, a lot's been made about a quote that you made a couple of years back at a lecture you did in Filey, where you stated that you'd signed Metallica for $500K.
Yeah.
Clearly you didn't sign Metallica as
No,
a band, but do you want to go into a bit of detail to explain that so people...
Yeah.
Takes him 4
Yeah, what it
minutes.
is, I use a lot of humor in my talks when I flit around that stupid field and, do gigs, which I really don't pursue and don't really like doing. And I've always used humor, everyone knows me, does. But there is a connection. I knew Metallica when they were coming up. They were a showcase band at that time, and if they probably don't know what showcase means, so I'm not going to explain it. And new artists at that time, different now, because not many good ones out there in my view. Metallica was a support act for a band I did work with on a tour, and that was called Fate's Warning. And Fate's Warning was supposed to be the Metallica. They didn't get the breaks they needed. They were signed to Metal Blade Records, which was a heavy metal label, not my genre, but I worked with the guys, and they're great guys. And I worked with them on their first album called Night on Brocken, and I'm on the credits on that album with the middle name Celery, because backstage, we called it Backstage Nasties, there was always, well, you've seen Spinal Tap and, the folding the bread, and that was just like that. And I would eat the celery, because you couldn't go wrong with celery. You know where it came from. So I got that nickname in the biz, because I always ate celery. And so, Fate's Warning, Metallica opened for them, and I'd also worked with the Tubes at that period, which had an album, if you remember, was Sheets of Beauty. I forget what the album was called now. Doesn't matter. These people will never know these people. And the Tubes are from Frisco, great guys. And so anyway, the Tubes wore suits, and they had this gimmick. So I remember Metallica was opening, touring with us, big clubs. It was all big Agora ballrooms, which over here in England, they don't know what that is. They were basically giant warehouses or ex-supermarkets or shops that had been converted into rock venues, maybe 2,000, 5,000 people you get there. And the Agora chain went all over the East Coast, down to Cleveland, up to Hartford, Connecticut. I worked for them for a while. And John Shear and all those guys, they're promoters and all that kind of thing. So none of this is important at all to Rendlesham. But as far as what I said, my friend Rich did sign Metallica. He was an A&R guy and for Enigma Metal Blade Records, and worked with Rich a long time. Was good friends with his wife Debbie and myself and my first wife, and he got $1 million. But because I introduced him, we gave the people I was working with gave him, that band Metallica, the option to get exposure on the East Coast, which they did not have. They're not from the East Coast. My joke was that I should have gotten half of that $1 million. I didn't, It's a joke. You have to be careful with the flying saucer people. They don't understand this world at all. So, in the end of the day, that was a joke, but I should have gotten $500,000 because, well, I got Rich up close and personal on that tour, and Metallica actually eclipsed Fates Warning, obviously, and all that. And I remember Metallica got mad at me because I suggested they wear suits and tear them off on stage, and it didn't go down well. And they liked the tight jeans and the high-top sneakers and really big hair thing going on then. And that's it. So, yeah, it's a true story. But no, I didn't get a penny. And Rich lost that over the next year through rock and roll behavior. But I hope he's well. Anyway, that's true.
So you flying saucer people wouldn't understand that Michael Alago actually signed Metallica. There's a documentary on Netflix about him. Nobody called Richard, and Larry did not introduce anybody to Metallica. Here he's saying, this is when he met John Lennon when he was 19 years old. Spent 2 days with him the week before he died in New York. This was taken at Cafe Fortuna by Vinnie Irwin, who just died last year, I think. This is his page. This is when 28th of November, the back garden at Cafe La Fortuna, like I've just said. That's Larry Warren when he was 19. Do I really need to say any more? So here he is, defacing the monuments in Rendlesham Forest. This is a Jimi Hendrix signature, written in lipstick. Genuine Jimi Hendrix, genuine Larry Warren. Perfect. So, when we challenged him on this, he said he was trained by the FBI in handwriting. So he's now a handwriting expert, and the FBI taught him how to forge rock star signatures. And Alison Dunlop, who's here in the audience, she took issue with the fact that they defaced the monument. This is Dave Hodrier. First of all, the wedding is done in lipstick and will wash off in the next rainfall. I would have in no way condoned permanent damage to said sculpture, as would nobody else who was present. So, when you go into the forest, when you get your pamphlet, they say, do not stand on it, do not sit on it. Larry took this picture. So they're really bothered with the... Moving on to some memorabilia nonsense that he says that he knew Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan signed the back of his jacket in 1986, 1988, the story changes. And he gave his jacket to his friend Dwayne Carlton in the, I think it was 1993, when he lived in Vermont. He told Dwayne that he knew Stevie, that he was his best friend. Dwayne is or was, he used to emulate Stevie Ray Vaughan. He was absolutely, infatuated with him. He would play all his songs where it would look like him. He actually did look really like him as well, to be fair. So, we wanted to get something analysed. Gary Heseltine said, if he's not been proven in a court of law, then he's completely innocent and there's no evidence that he's lied and there's no evidence of his forgery. And I will not accept that he's done that unless he's convicted. Well, obviously we're not going to get a conviction on something that happened in 1993, but the next best thing was Dwayne had it analysed. He paid for it out of his own pocket to have this signature analysed, and the reason that it failed is because the name Vaughan is spelled incorrectly. So Stevie Ray Vaughan doesn't know how to spell his own name either. So when I revealed what I knew at that time, obviously I was very angry because I've been his friend and supporter for 9 years. I've got into a lot of arguments on his behalf and got him on loads of radio shows, loads of things, did loads for him. And not because I love him, but because I believed him. So this was the first message that I found. You are so fucked. Best move. Bless. And this is where I'd just moved into a new house, got a baby. The baby was 10 months old when Larry moved in with us. So obviously, that annoyed me. I said I was going to go to the June 2016 conference that SPI put together. and I was going to ask him a question. Why is Adrian Bustin's story exactly the same as yours? For that, he said, this is the outlaw way, and I'm sorry to have to post. I will have my family and close friends there at the venue. If you, whomever, makes a move on me or those I love, understand this. I will jump off stage and put your windpipe through your spine. You are a threat at that point and your life will end, really. And faster than venue security could deal with. Okay. This actually got him a ban from the campus. Now, this was directed at me, but he said whomever, because other people said, well, I'll ask the question then, if you can't go, because I got barred. Is that a butterfly? Okay, let's move on. Here he is saying that me, Alison and James were Antifa. I'm just going to move around so I can read this properly. Okay. This is a true fascist and commies. Don't we just love them? This is Alison Dunlop, who runs Glasgow. Thank you. Next is pure filth called James Francis Welch, the sex crime fella. Where's that come from? That's not true. Then Sacha Christie from Leeds, who supported basically the London bombings and the 7/7 bombers. And they live in Liverpool, and we're all scum, they live in Glasgow, and these fucks need to be run out of life, out of blood, traitors to you and yours. Stand up to this filth. Get some as a military term for killing people. Need to be run out of life and run out of blood. Now, because that's not an actual death threat, the police didn't want to know. He's not said it to me or to Alison, so it's not harassment. He's saying it about us, and because he's not actually said these people need to be murdered, it's not illegal. Hunting season. That's me. Because we're just doing a stupid duck face photo. Here we are. As long as it's not Christie's Antifa, a good friend and supporter of the 7/7 bombers. Really? A military expert and good pal of the 7/7 bombers. Folks might wish to know, considering last week's terror attack in Manchester, Miss Christie was a neighbour and friend of the 7/7 bombers and a very vocal supporter of them, and it's on the record. And when she says MI5 were watching her, she is telling that one thing is true. She's a show, and frankly, in my view, a danger to the UK. Such wisdom from a pal of the 7/7 bombers. Remember, SC was in a nut house for a year, supports the 7/7 bombers, her pal from Leeds, and hates America. These are the facts I know to be true. And he calls my fella Dave a hacker and told people, block them quickly because he can hack your computer through your Facebook page from being on his friends list. Here we go. Sadly done by this ex-mental hospital inmate, and you all love me so much. Same one. Then one of his cohorts that I'm faking things, needs to be put in a mental ward. Oh no, I was in a mental ward, and I need to be sectioned for everybody's safety. Okay. Then he started saying that it was a 9/11, we worked at 9/11 for 4 months, sorry, not at 9/11, Ground Zero for 4 months. And this is him taking a police helmet to 11th and 5th precincts and handing it over as a show of solidarity from Merseyside police to these, the police in America, the first responders. So when people say to me, well, why aren't the police interested? Well, his brother-in-law's in the police in Merseyside. And then he says he acted as an emissary to take that helmet over with a load of patches, and he represented Merseyside police. Also, Gary Heseltine is the next police officer. This is where he says that he is working at Ground Zero. This is one of the images that he used. It says, He's got no tag. He would have turnout gear on and he would have a tag. On this, an interview with Gary Heseltine on the sofa, Larry says that he wasn't working at Ground Zero, he was just there. And he was there with his brother-in-law who was investigating the attacks. Well, nothing was investigated actually on where it happened. They shipped everything out to Fresh Hills and then investigated there. And Gary says, and this is the federal officer that could get you occasional access. So he's gone from having worked there for 4 months to having occasional access. And he had 4 visits over 6 months, is what he's saying, and now they said they found his passport, and it's 4 visits over 8 months. Well, that doesn't even fit in with the timeline of events, with what was going on in Ground Zero. And this, I was speaking to an actual Ground Zero first responder, Danielle Burani, and she said this is an access road where the trucks brought everything out, and when it was operational, there was graffiti. It looked like graffiti on the walls because it was all arrows, go this way, go that way. The road has been resurfaced and it's all clean. And this is a springtime uniform, so it doesn't even fit. The site was shut, and that is not him working. So when Danielle challenged him, and she said, you know, where's your proof of presence? Who are you with? Who knows you? Because she knew everybody pretty much. She runs the Sisterhood of Ground Zero, first responders. It's a charity for all the women who were first responders. She also has been campaigning for the Victims' Compensation Fund, like a fiend, and has set up a mental health organisation for anybody who was affected by the atrocities. That's the kind of person she is. But she got called a troll, and every time she said anything, they deleted the comments and they blocked her. She offered to go on a radio show with Phil Mantle and Chris Evers on their radio show and debate with this with Warren, but they said no, stonewalled her completely, called her a troll. Someone said that she can be a troll and a first responder at the same time. He used this image in the video, but this is actually one of George Bush's photographs. But they don't say that it was George Bush's photograph. They don't say anything about it, so you kind of think he's provided this picture. But when you do reverse image search, this takes you straight back to a collection of photographs that belong to George Bush and are now in the museum. Another lie he says that he was in the Hells Angels, and he was in the Hells Angels for 28 years in America and over here in this country. This is him flashing his patches to Joe Montaldo and Christine, can't remember her last name. Anyway, there's his Hells Angels patches. The Hells Angels got wind of this, they went round and confiscated them from him because he's never ever been a Hells Angel. But the reason he tells people he's a Hells Angel because he threatens people all the time if they try to out him, and he's building this image that he's a scary biker and that if you cross him, his henchmen are going to get you. So Gary Heseltine, he got involved, 18 months ago, whatever. In January 2018, he started doing all the talking. There's no sign of Larry, just Gary doing all the talking. Now, he says there's no evidence at all that Larry Warren has lied. And then until he gets a conviction in a court of law, he's an innocent man, and everything that I'm saying is just twisted. It's all coming from me. Well, you can see through the whole presentation that it's not coming from me. I'm repeating what all these other people have said over the years. Every single time somebody says, oh, well, why will you tell me that the story's changed? It says in Kevin Randall's book, Project Moondust, that he changes his story all the time. That was written in 1995. And in the tape with Linda in 1986, she said to him, why was I told that your story would change? So it's not me saying this. And as I've proven, he said to me in the first instance that he took Adrian Gustin's story, and you've seen for a fact that that is what he said. Now, I wish Linda would put this tape out so we can actually hear him saying it, because I would have rather have had every single one of these things as audio from him, coming from his mouth. So it's not me saying it, it's him saying it. So this is Gary Heseltine's counter-evidence.
And so, in a sense, they have badgered witnesses, in many cases, in my opinion, and they are just out to destroy. And it's led by one certain woman who I think was a sycophant, had a crush on him. I've said this before.
I had a crush on him. This is all about a crush. Those are a couple of the videos that he's done. All you need to do really is go onto YouTube, find two things, old, new, whatever. Thank you. And listen to them both, and you will hear for yourself that they are not the same. He never says the same thing twice. Every single time I've listened to something, there's something different in it. So you don't even have to listen to me. Go listen to him. Go find some of his stuff on YouTube and listen to him. Just only two. You don't have to go mad and do all of them because there's absolutely loads.
I genuinely believe that Larry was there on the third night. When Colonel Halt, and we had a good working relationship for 7 years, he basically started to say to me, I finally got the evidence that I've been waiting for on Larry Warren. He always had a down on him, but he started to say, and I would say, well, what's your evidence? And he wouldn't tell me, oh, I've got a source now, I've got a source, and I'm going to dish the dirt and finally kill off the Larry Warren as a liar, con man, blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't put two and two at first together, but it's clear now, through association, when you look at the screen grabs, etc., that it's quite clear that the source was this #1 fan who I loved Larry Warren, I'm sure I did, and then suddenly flipped, and now I'm his #1 hate, and I'm going to destroy this guy. And it's kind of quite creepy, it's kind of fatal attraction stuff. This is not normal behaviour, and anybody with a reasonable opinion could see the level of venom that it's not normal.
So me pointing out that he's lied to my face in my home. It's not normal behaviour. It's not normal behaviour. He says I'm obsessed because I've gone to the trouble of finding instances where he's lied. Recently, Alison Dunlop saying, we've talked about this, Gary Heseltine never has women speakers. He recently said on a radio show that he doesn't have them because, in his opinion, women cannot get on stage and comfortably speak of evidential things. Well, I hope I proved him wrong there. Well, that's basically it. So, their best evidence is that I'm a crazy #1 fan, it's fatal attraction stuff, and everything is coming from me, when basically I've just shown you that it's not coming from me, that the whole time I've just been repeating things that he said and he said to other people, and then what he said to me, and there you have it. That's it, the Larry Warren fraud. Oh, I will be putting another video together because I didn't actually have time to go into all the memorabilia forgeries that he's done, but I will do that. When this goes up on YouTube, I will cobble it together so you get a full timeline of everything to do with Rendlesham, which is what I concentrated on here because obviously you're all in the UFO community and everyone says, what has the memorabilia stuff got to do with UFOs? Well, absolutely nothing, but everything to do with the integrity of this man and the fact that he lies and he cheats and he cons people out of money. And I have actually put, my blogs have got, it's just stacked full of actual evidence if anybody would actually care to read them. So, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Sacha. That's brilliant. Well, I've got a little surprise. Oh, sorry. There's a little award ceremony now.
Oh, no.
Right. We've got something here.
I hope it's not for courage.
This is sorry, Sacha, we should have had too much. We've got a Paranormal Dimensions and Haunted Skies presents Colonel Halt Returns to Woodbridge 2019, awarded to Sacha Christie for the ultimate bravery in ufology in 2019.
Right, okay, I don't really count this on a speech. Yeah, I've always said that I don't see why people should get awards in ufology because, you know, there's really no evidence and we're all kind of, all we've got is muse babble. But I don't really deserve this because I didn't do it on my own. There's so many people here and so many people in the background who've actually contributed to this. And then when I say it's not, I say it's just 4 of us, but it's not, there's been hundreds. So to all of those people who sent me anything and helped in any way, thanks. And I want to share it with you.
We're not done yet. It's got a message from Nick Pope. Now, everyone knows Nick Pope, surely. I said, I have here a special message from former Minister of Defence UFO investigator Nick Pope. Nick now lives in America, in Tucson, Arizona actually, and can't be here today, but asked this dedication be read in his absence. He said, I've got to turn around, so come over here.
Okay, okay.
He said, Sacha, your tenacity and courage has been an inspiration, and while I haven't always agreed with your conclusions in relation to topics such as the Rendlesham Forest incident, I respect your abilities and approach, and as a researcher and investigator, nobody in ufology should have to be brave, but you have been. In a situation where your research had uncovered a fraud being perpetrated on the UFO community, you spoke out when it would have been easier to stay silent. The vile con man who you exposed chose to make disgusting threats of violence against you and your family, and incited others to do so. To do violence against you, and with a few honourable exceptions, the UFO community was shamefully silent on this behaviour. One former British transport policeman, when alerted to this illegal and cowardly behaviour, chose to bully you instead of thanking you for exposing a con man. Seemingly because he has a financial interest in keeping the fraudulent story going. If ever there was an example of moral cowardice in ufology, this is it. You stood up to them. Not done yet. You saw what others didn't, or chose not to see, and pursued the truth with dogged determination. Your courage and bravery in the face of insults and threats of violence does you credit. I hope the UFO community will recognise your contribution, support you, and stand with you against the bullies and fraudsters. Thank you. Nick Pope.
Nice one.
I'm not done yet.
What's going on?
I'm not done yet. Now, you may remember in 2015, Colonel Halt came here in 2015. It was when you did your last talk here. And there was a book written about it by Peter Robbins. On the back of, it was supporting the book Left at Eastgate, which has been withdrawn by publication. Now, this is a message from Peter Robbins.
Oh, right.
Because he's actually, this is it, yeah, right, I thought I had the paper. Right, it says, I first met Sacha Christie almost a dozen years ago. At that time, she struck me as smart, thoughtful and observant, possessing a great sense of humour and kind enough to drive me and my co-author of a book about the Rendlesham Forest incident from Liverpool to Devon, where we would be speaking at one of John Downes' annual 40th cryptozoology conferences. The drive took most of the night. She and I chatted through some of it, and alternately listened several times to the first album of the then new singing Amy Winehouse. Thinking back on it all now, I don't imagine either of us could have guessed how our relationship would have evolved over the years that followed. But evolve it did, with Sacha at first politely, then less politely, though fully warranted, that I had missed things in my initial research 20 years earlier, and was all but oblivious to the true nature of the person I had been then defending and championing for years. My initial reaction to her criticisms and the results of her personal investigation, to ignore them and brush them aside. Her reaction to my doing so, don't even ask. Sacha Christie is no one to ignore, especially when she is correct, righteous in her convictions, and armed with facts that fly in the face of what you had previously believed to be the truth. Our relationship, adversarial at that point, went on to become one based on mutual respect and admiration. She is someone I will always be proud to call a friend and a colleague, and her courage in the face of numerous outrageous personal attacks upon her and upon her family, dedication to exposing a history of intrusion, personal attacks upon her and upon her family, dedication to exposing a history of infuriating pathological lies, and conviction that doing so was not just the right course of action for her to take, but the only course of action to pursue given the circumstances that she was confronted with. Today, I join with so many of the rest of you in acknowledging this remarkable woman for accomplishing the difficult task she undertook in setting an extremely crooked record straight, but in bringing her honour to herself for never backing down, even when threatened or in seeing her family attacked by someone not worthy of shining her shoes. Well done, Sacha, and thank you. With respect, admiration and affection. From just outside Ithaca, New York, Peter Robbins.
Wow, that's amazing.
Want a final word?
Yeah, it's been
emotional.
emotional.
I have to say that I actually support everything that Nick and Peter said. So I mean, Sacha's been really amazing.
Oh, well, I don't really know what to say now, but I just had to do it because I saw him. I feel like it fell to me to do it because I knew him and I saw what he was doing in their home and he was lying to my face. And, you know, people have taken the piss because I keep saying, this happened to me in my life. But it really did. They tried to destroy my life. They tried to have my children taken away from me by telling social services that I was a drug addict, and they tried to have my disability benefits stopped by telling them that I was working and running around in high heels. They literally tried to destroy my life. So, you know, I was going to fight back. There was no way I was going to take that lying down, and that's what I did. And I don't feel like I did anything that special. It was just me being me and not taking anybody's shit, and that's what I did. So I just felt like I had to do it. So all this is just a bit mad. I don't know what to say now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sacha Christie, thank you.